Welcome, everyone, to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. Thank you so much for listening. We have an awesome episode this week. We have Buck and Troy Aikman together, followed by our weekly Traina Thoughts segment with Sal Licata. Joe and Troy entering year number, well, not entering, they're in year number 22 together. And they will top John Madden and Pat Summerall for the longest broadcast crew in the NFL with 22 years together. So we discussed that and a variety of other topics. Talked to Joe about if he'll ever call baseball again. Got Troy's opinions on the Tush push, what's going on with Bill Belichick, some broadcasting stuff, Tom Brady. So excellent stuff from Joe and Troy from ESPN Monday Night Football. And then in Traina Thoughts, we read some mailbag questions. We're going to start doing that every week on the podcast. So check that out. Before we get to it, just a quick reminder, if you missed any recent episodes, go into the archives and check them out. We had Brian Curtis from The Ringer on last week, Andrew Marchand of the New York Post 2 weeks ago, Kevin Clark from ESPN 3 weeks ago. So if you missed any of those, check them out. Give them a listen. Subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina and rate and review on Apple. All right, let's get to it. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, followed by Traina Thoughts, all right here, right now on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right, very excited. I've had them both separately many times on the podcast, but I have them together. The broadcast crew, the best broadcast crew in the NFL from ESPN, Monday Night Football, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman. Joe, Troy, how you guys doing?
Good.
We're good. I have a question already. You said the best broadcast crew in the NFL from ESPN's Monday Night Football. Was that the best broadcast crew in the NFL? And they're also from ESPN's Monday Night Football? Or is it just of all the people that ESPN has doing the NFL, we're the best group?
Well, since you brought that up, then I'll just tell everyone that 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, during the Giants-Seahawks game, I tweeted that Troy is so far and away the best analyst in the sport right now that the gap between him and number two is really wide. And Dan Orlovsky actually replied to me on Twitter and was like, hey, what about me? So I did mean across the entire NFL. Anybody want to respond to that? Look at Troy's just laughing away over there.
Yeah, no, thank you for the compliment. It means a lot.
Absolutely. It does. It does mean a lot. It's kind of a funny thing. You don't get most of the feedback you get is negative, and it's people on Twitter, and it's people that are ripping you and saying you're a moron. And, to have somebody who watches this stuff and pays attention saying that is nothing that I take lightly. I think it's great. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate that. And we're going to get into all this stuff, and it's your 22nd year together, and I want to talk about that, and you're passing Madden and Summerall. But I do listen and watch very carefully. So I heard something this past Monday night that I'd like to sort of maybe facilitate here on the pod. Where Joe, because I am a degenerate gambler, so anytime there's a bet involved, my ears perk up. Joe, you offered Troy $100 if Troy could name 4 players on the Texas Rangers.
Hey, Jimmy.
I thought this would be the perfect time to see if Troy can do that, and then you can pay him when you see him on Monday.
Let's see. Pudge Rodriguez, Nolan Ryan, Alex Rodriguez.
So no $100 for Troy.
No $100.
No $100
bet
for Troy.
I've ever made in my life.
There you go.
I love that moment though, and I think that moment because Steve Ackles, our producer, who's phenomenal, clipped that. Somebody had that on Twitter and sent that to us the next day. Kind of like, hey, love this for you two guys. And it is, I think it does kind of speak to our relationship, and it speaks to our friendship, and it speaks to the fact that he came back with, there was a time in October I didn't have to work with you. I was so happy that like I was, I love that he came back at me. So it's that stuff is really fun, and I think hopefully separates us.
It was definitely a fun moment. You want to offer Troy $50 if he can name one Texas Ranger?
Yeah. No, okay. I'm not doing that to him. I like him too much. I'm not going to do that to him.
I mean, they advance. You got to learn one player on the team.
Nate Eovaldi.
There you go. Like I said, you guys now 22 years together. Madden and Summerall did 21. I know, Troy, you were a huge Madden guy.
Yeah.
Talk to me about,
actually.
Yeah. I know Madden sort of took you under his wing a little bit, right?
A little bit, but the friendship didn't initially start that way. First of all, I was really fortunate in my career that when we got good, which happened relatively quickly, all things considered, Madden and Summerall, they narrated the highlight reels of my career. So, I'm really happy about that. But because of that, because they covered so many of our games, I became very close friends with them on a personal level. Pat lived just outside of Dallas. I spent time, at holiday parties with him. I did a TV show with him while I was playing for 2 seasons, a weekly show. And then Madden, got to know him, spent 4th of July's with him up in Northern California, and played golf with him. And so then when I retired and decided to go into broadcasting, I picked his brain a lot. And that first year we were together at Fox. And then 1 year later, I was actually in Santa Barbara, and he called me. That's how I got the news that he was leaving Fox and going to Monday Night Football, that he called me and gave me the news, and had little idea what that might mean to me. But that's when Joe and I and Chris Collinsworth got paired and moved up. But yeah, John he was a special friend, as Pat was as well. And the fact that we're even mentioned in the same sentence with them because of our longevity, it means a lot. It's something that I'm really proud of.
The worst thing you or any analyst could do is go into a broadcasting career and try to copy or imitate John Madden or be John Madden. So given that, what did you try to take from him, though, when you started to do games?
Well, the questions I had was just that there's a lot going on in the booth. And when you get into the booth as a player, straight from the field, it takes some time to figure out exactly what you're supposed to be looking at. I asked him those kinds of questions, like, what do you focus on pre-snap? What are you looking at the snap? And what I found is that, he views it differently. One, because he was a coach, but also because he was a linebacker. So, he views it more along the line of scrimmage. That's what he got into a lot of. Matt Millen, the same way. And then when I came into it, I was a unique analyst compared to what Fox had at that time. And so I talked more bigger picture. I talked more from a quarterback perspective. And there was a resistance initially to where they said, hey, we need more offensive line play. And I said, well, if you need more offensive line play, then you got the wrong guy, because that's not what I do. And so everybody comes at it a little bit differently. But what John's advice was to me was, hey, where your strength is right now is you're fresh off the field. You know what's happening. You know the players. Whereas his strength was that he knew television and he had been broadcasting for a long time. So that then is what he leaned on more. And I agree. I don't try to be anybody. I mean, I do listen to all analysts. I know what I think is good and why it might be good. And with that, then you try to say, okay, yeah, maybe I should, attack this in this way. But at the end of the day, I'm who I am. My personality is what it is. And I don't try to be John. And quite honestly, I think early on, there were a lot of analysts trying to be John Madden. And I understand it to a point. If he's the best, then everybody's kind of wanting to be that. But I think analysts now have been given a little bit more runway to be who they are. And I think that those analysts who have been able to do that, I think they've been better served.
Yeah. Joe, obviously, Troy was the player, now the broadcaster. You've been a broadcaster your whole life. So I would assume the 22 years together with Troy passing Madden and Summerall, longest tenured NFL broadcast crew, has special meaning to you, being in this business, with your dad being in this business, et cetera.
Yeah, and I have personal ties to both guys. My dad was a broadcast partner to both. My dad did radio football with Pat. They were both at CBS for a long time. My dad was one of Madden's first TV partners, and I know John really liked my dad, and obviously vice versa. So I always had that connection to John and to Pat when I would show up at the Fox seminar and I was down the list of play-by-play guys. So I do appreciate that fact. I am proud of the body of work that he and I have put together. you have to throw the first 3 years in there with Chris too. And I think we're better now than we've ever been, which I think is the best part of it all. I honestly believe that. I think Troy's better than he's ever been. I think I'm more dialed in than I've ever been. Maybe that's without baseball and not kind of running on fumes during this particular month on the calendar. But to think, at least in my opinion, we're still growing and still getting better, and that to me is more exciting than milestones. I when I was the youngest this and the youngest that, I just had to go do it. I didn't really get caught up in all that stuff. And at the end of the day, nobody really cares other than my family. I'm proud of everything I've done with the other guy on this podcast. And I'm really proud of everything I've done with you, Jimmy, over the years. I feel like we've done some good work too.
We have. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to grill you later on some things.
No, that's fine. I hope so.
We've got some things to discuss. Just on your 22 years before we switch gears, did either of you have, it could be different, a moment, a game, a season where you felt like we're really good, we're in a groove, this is working, this is kind of special? Like, when did you first feel that?
I think right out of the gate, I knew it was pretty interesting. I think it was very different, obviously, with another person in there, being Chris and Troy being very different people and very different broadcasters. By the way, I think that's really the only time it kind of works, when the two analysts in a 3-man booth are different, and that was certainly the case with Chris and Troy. But I never felt like we weren't in a good rhythm. I never felt like we were a bad listen. I do feel like once you get through your first Super Bowl and you come back around and you're lined up for the next year, and now Chris had moved on and it was Troy and me, it didn't take long, that fourth year total, for us to get into an even better rhythm, because it was almost like the weight was off, the weights, the handicap was off, and that has nothing to do with Chris. It could have been anybody. But I think 3-man booths are very hard. And when it was just the two of us, it became very easy to get into a rhythm together. And he knew when I stopped talking, it was his turn. I knew when he stopped talking, at some point it was my turn, as opposed to having another person in there. So I think I would say year 4 is when it felt like, okay, this is really good. I enjoy this, and hopefully it lasts for a while.
Troy, you got anything on that?
Yeah, no, I would basically agree. I don't think there was, this moment when, hey, this is really good, or hey, this works. I know that I had been in a 3-man booth my first year with Moose, and then 3 years following that with Chris. And I mean, I knew 4 games into my career with Moose that 3-man booth was tough, and it wasn't something that I really wanted to continue to do. So I was excited when it became a 2-man booth, and you just control the broadcast a little bit more, and you're not scatter shooting after every play, and chasing a lot of different things. So that part of it was good. And I would just add this, Jimmy, that, and Joe and I have talked about it, and we've talked about it on other podcasts and with other writers, that when you get to 22 years, there's a lot of things that have gone well for you. I mean, there's other pairings that could have lasted that long as well, but it was not because of anything they could control. And there was changes made, or this network lost football, or whatever it might be, or this guy wanted to retire. Joe and I came in, we're roughly the same age. I'm a little bit older. And, but when I left for ESPN, there was no certainty that Joe was going to be able to get out of his contract. So there was a lot going on there. And I think that had Joe have not wanted to come to ESPN, or if I had not wanted Joe to work with Joe any longer, we both had equal opportunities to kind of take a stand and say, hey, this has been great for, 20 years, but, it's time to kind of move on. We could have very easily have done that. And I think the fact that we're still working together, it's one thing to say, hey, you really respect the guy and you're really close friends. But I think that both of us going to ESPN and continuing to work, really put an exclamation mark at the end of that. And it meant a lot to me. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much it's meant to me that Joe wanted to come and continue to work with me. And I think it's fair to say that it meant as much to him that I wanted to continue to work with him. And so if anything else, going to ESPN has only made our relationship that much stronger.
The parallel is interesting because here you are passing Madden and Summerall, and Madden and Summerall, and you guys are the rare teams that stayed together at different networks. They were obviously at CBS for a million years. CBS loses the NFL. They went together to Fox. I'm sure, NBC at the time, who had the rights, were trying to get them, or Monday Night Football, but they stayed together. And then here you guys are. Troy goes to ESPN. Joe wasn't there yet. It was Troy leaving first, and then you guys end up together. It's an interesting parallel to Madden and Summerall that you remain together. I mean, John ended up having other partners afterwards, but we work with Al Michaels. But it's an interesting.
I'm pretty sure John ended up at every network.
Yeah, he did. I think. Yeah.
When it was all said and done, and I'm just as proud of that, and I do like that parallel that Pat and John stayed together, and he and I stayed together, and it's just, this business is too weird, and it's too tough at times, not knowing who is standing next to you and what they're all about and what their motives are and if they've got your back. And to have that, and to have forget the mechanics of the broadcast and the rhythm and all that stuff. We've got that down, that's baked in. But knowing, like, even that moment that we've already talked about, where I know I can throw something at him. If I was working this year with Greg Olson and I said that, I don't know if that's going to piss him off. I don't know if he's going to be like, hey, why are you trying to? But Troy one-upped me by ripping me, saying there was a time when I didn't have to work with you in October. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I can give him trouble. He can give it back and be better at it than me. And that is like a great moment for us. It has nothing to do with me. Like, I genuinely root for Troy to be great. And I know he does for me. And that is what it's all about. And I would imagine with Madden and Summerall, not having asked him this specifically, but they fit together so well because John was so big and such a big presence and a personality and a wham and, kind of snot hanging off the face mask and all the other stuff. And Pat was the straight man. And we're not that, but we fit together on the air in a way that I think is genuinely pleasing to people's ears and sensibilities when they're listening to the game, if they bother to listen to it that closely.
I think I said this to Troy the last time he was on, and he sort of stayed silent and gave me a look, but I'll try again. How happy are you didn't go to Amazon with all those crappy games?
I wouldn't say it quite like that. I think that, at the end of the day, we want to call good games, and last year, this isn't a news flash. The games on Amazon, weren't great. And I think the league addressed that. And, there's still a lot of football left, but they've had some good games, and our schedule's strong. So, I like that part of it, and I like that we're in the Super Bowl rotation. That was a big part of it as well.
You guys have to be looking forward to that, I'm sure, but it's still a little bit ways away, so you can't look forward to it too much.
Yeah.
I want to put a bow on the Madden and Summerall situation with you guys passing them with a clip from John Madden that I'd like to get a response from you guys. Shelby, do you have the audio of that clip, please, for Joe and Troy of John Madden during a game?
And you noticed Pat Troy Aikman's trying to grow a beard, and he just can't do it. I mean, the blonde-haired guys, a lot of them have trouble, but I can't even. I'm looking as close as I can, and I can't see any beard. But that's a 4-day beard, isn't it?
It's a passive attempt.
No, it's very, very passive.
Troy, did you ever confront Madden about that?
No. Well, a couple things. One is, I knew in production meetings if there was something John was going to jump on during the ball game the next day. And we talked about that. He asked me, John, one of his great strengths was he was very observant of everything. And then he would have his take on it. But I had a little growth, and what are you doing? And I was just answering. I knew there was probably a chance he was going to be doing something on it. And then when there's blowout games, that's when he gets a chance to just go off the rails and go wherever he wants. And so that didn't surprise me at all. Didn't talk to him. The reason I didn't talk to him was, they didn't have TiVo back then. You could record on VHS, but nobody really, that was a lot. You had to read the manual to figure that out as to how it was going to be done.
That would be all over Twitter, that clip today.
Yeah, I never went back and watched games of mine, so I never knew what John had to say.
Well, the best part of that is obviously it's not going to work for a podcast, but if you watch on YouTube, he actually uses the telestrator.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it. Yeah. And but that was John's greatness. I mean, when people reflect on John Madden, they don't talk about anything that he talked about that had to do with football. And yet John would tell you that he was a football guy, and you'd say, well, maybe, but that's not what everyone knows you as. I mean, they know you as a guy who's busting through in the Miller Lite commercials and, boom, bam, and fast acting, and, all that stuff. So,
Joe, do you want to wait? I see you laughing. Do you have anything you want to chime in with?
No, I just, it's almost like a badge of honor. Like if I'm Troy, that you have that clip of somebody like John talking about his beard. I think it's funny. I mean, that was the kind of stuff that he would say about, all of us at the seminar. Eventually, at some point, he'd have some wisecrack about something about you. And like Troy said, he was just very observant. Had stuff that he would say to me about my dad. But I think a lot of the stories that my dad told me, and even watching him from a distance interact with big-time analysts, served me well as I think back on it. I remember my dad doing games with Madden and him hearing in his ear, I don't know if it was Bob Stenner, John's longtime producer, or somebody else at that point, but my dad was asking John on the air questions, trying to lead him in certain directions. And I remember it clear as if it were yesterday, my dad telling me, the producer's saying, John doesn't need that. John doesn't want that. And then his time with Tim McCarver in baseball, I knew the seating and the hierarchy of that booth. And it was Tim, who was hosting Olympics at that time. And my dad was the guy who took over for Brent Musburger, who had been fired, and my dad was supposed to do the number 2 game with Jim Cott. That was a rough go, with those two, and they didn't really see eye to eye and whatever. And so I think there's been something baked into me to be, and maybe that's why I've enjoyed everybody I've worked with, is I've been willing to, when it was Tim, kind of try to, hoist him up as best I could and Smoltz and set him up. It's about being a setup guy. It's about calling the action and either getting out of the way or knowing with whatever action you just called, it's right in the garden spot for the analyst to talk about. And that comes from knowing Troy's sensibilities in this case. And so it's stuff that was baked into me watching my dad that I wasn't even aware was happening at the time. And I think some of the issues he had with doing big time network TV benefited me without me even really realizing it.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit. I had Brian Curtis of The Ringer on this podcast last week, who wrote a big feature on you guys about doing 22 years together and passing Madden and Summerall. And my favorite part of the story was an anecdote where I guess when you guys would leave games and you would be in the car going to the airport or the hotel or wherever, I know how much Joe hates Twitter and has been Twitter fodder.
X? You mean X?
No, I still say Twitter. And Troy would read Joe's Twitter mentions. And I was impressed by the level of ball busting by Troy on that.
Well, I would read mine.
I thought you would read Joe's.
No,
I would read mine. And Joe would be mentioned in some of them.
Right.
And some of these people that tweet are really clever,
Yeah.
It's pretty funny stuff.
Right.
I don't even read it anymore. I'm not very active. I'm active on Instagram. That's about it. Twitter.
I was jealous. I noticed The Rock likes a bunch of your posts on Instagram. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, no, I've gotten to know him. He's endorsed my beer too, so that's
there you go.
That doesn't hurt anything, but yeah.
No, I think it does. I feel like we all battled the Twitter /X phenomenon when you do network TV. Some more than others. I'm friends with enough people that are in other areas of media that don't really have that experience with social media. Like Rudd's not even on it, but if he were, it'd be like, oh my God, Paul, I love you. You're the best. I loved Ant-Man. It was unreal. Or John Hamm. Oh God, that was unbelievable. I'm blanking on the name of the damn show that he's famous
Mad
for.
Men.
Mad Men. I had Ant-Man on the mind, and so their experience with social media is different. When you're the person calling these games, and Troy's the person analyzing these games, and half the audience is pissed off because either A, they're diehard fans of that team, or B, like you, they just lost a big bet. They're coming at you with whatever they got just because they're mad, and we're the messengers. So, at some point you have to separate yourself from it. So when Troy would do that in the back of the car, I'd just be like, will you just turn that shit off, please? It's just driving me. Like, I don't get on there. And like Troy and I, here's what you do. I mean, here's what you do. Okay. I mean, you're getting into Madden, but you do the game, you let a day go by, you post something, people then comment on that post,
right,
thereby shoving down all the "you sucked on this game" comments, and then you're free to go about your business and look back at Twitter mentions.
Well, I always tell people in the business who sometimes listen. Every single person has sort of been in the muck on Twitter for either tweeting something bad or doing something. Everyone's had like a moment. And I always tell like friends who'll come to me about, should I tweet about it? Should I address it? I say, if you just wait 24 hours, it'll go away, because then it'll be someone else's turn to get all the shit for it. Like, if you could just write it out 24 hours, you're fine.
It's hard.
Yeah, well, the other, there's two things to that. One is, from my perspective, there wasn't social media when I played.
Right.
But there was plenty of critics and, and writers, and, you run into people, and I forget exactly how, talk radio. And when you're the Cowboys quarterback, you deal with that, and it's just part of the job. And, you don't read the paper, you don't turn on the TV at night and watch the local news, and you don't listen to the radio when you're in your car, and you just move on. And so then we were broadcasting when social media came about. And so I think that from the perspective of having been a player, it wasn't as effective. I wasn't as affected by it, I guess.
Yeah.
But now, I don't know, it's probably wrong for me to say this, but does anybody even care about Twitter or X or whatever it is? I mean, I know Elon Musk does. He paid a lot of money for it, but I don't.
Well, he's lost a lot of money on it. That's why.
Pay 5 seconds worth of attention to anything that's on Twitter or what's written about me, or I don't look at replies. It's just, who cares?
You know who cares? Your bosses.
Well, I think they once. I know at Fox they once did, and I'm sure at ESPN. I'm sure they do. I'm not suggesting that.
And I agree with you. It's bizarre. I don't think they should care, but they.
But I don't think it carries the weight that maybe it once did.
I agree,
and I don't think there's as much venom. I mean, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think everyone's kind of tired.
Yeah, because everyone loves Joe now. Which leads me to something I have to ask you, Joe. Like you said, we've had some good podcast moments. You've been on a million times. So I feel like I can talk to you the way like I would talk to a good friend.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why can't you just cut the nonsense, stop this charade, and do some baseball for ESPN already?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Stop playing this game. People on Twitter during the playoffs have been like, where's Joe Buck? We want Joe Buck. I checked.
Well, Joe Buck's been gone for 2 years now, and he ain't coming back.
Stop.
So I
stop.
I'm not.
You will never, ever call a baseball playoff game. Like they had 4 games the other day, ESPN. I mean, they're trotting out A-Rod. Like, you can't do one game for us in the playoffs one of these years.
Trotting out A-Rod.
Nobody wants to hear A-Rod, so.
They're trotting out A-Rod.
Why can't you just stop the charade?
They're not going to trot me out. They trotted me out in the pregame show a couple nights ago.
Right. Scott Van Pelt lost his voice.
Yeah, so that's good. I'll step in a pinch in that case. If there's a playoff game in St. Louis and somebody shows up and they forgot their suit and they can't talk and somebody needs to run down there and do it, I will tell you this: I'm lost on who's who. Like I'm giving Troy crap about can you name 4 Rangers. There's been so much turnover in 2 years that getting out of it.
Yeah.
I watched some of the playoff game last night. I'm like, I don't know who 70% of these players. I've never heard of any of them. So I would have, if I were to go back and be like, oh yeah, just go call a game. Well, that requires a hell of a lot of work because you're catching up for X number of, it'll be years by that point. So if the Cardinals need me or want me to come down and do a game someday with Chip Carey to have Buck and Carey together again, maybe I would do that just for fun. But I just don't have any desire to call network baseball anymore.
All right. So just to be clear for all the aggregators out there, Joe Buck will never call a baseball game on ESPN.
And aggregate all you want. If I do it someday, I don't think anybody's going to remember this moment.
Oh, they will. I'll make sure of it.
Okay, all right.
Believe me. Like I always try to make people remember the time I told you that Tom Brady would be your broadcast partner when Troy left before we knew you were going to leave. And
right.
if
you're
Fox
still wrong on that.
If Fox didn't let you out of your contract, I would be right. It'd be you and Tom next year.
Okay. Well, maybe you will be right. But at this moment, you are not right.
Okay. But I say I'm right.
Okay, well, of course you do.
Troy, do you have any relationship with Tom? Has he come to you for broadcasting advice yet? Like, is he has?
Yeah.
What do you think about him doing it next year? Some people, there's a lot of questions about whether he'd be good, whether he'd not be. I think he's going to be great. And I'm curious, I don't know if you can share anything that you've talked to him about, but I would love to hear it.
No, I think he'll be great as well. I mean, you never know. I mean, there's a lot of people, of course, that people thought would be great that weren't. So you never do know. But Tom's one of those guys that has been great at everything he's done, and he works hard at it, puts in the time, doesn't take shortcuts, and so I think he'll be great as well. And so the question is he going to do it? I think he has every intention of doing it. I think he's watching this year and seeing what he can pick up. I'm sure at some point, if he hasn't already, he'll be in the trucks or be in the booths at some of the games, watching as well. But, I do think that he's in a moment in time like I was when I got going, where he's got young children and now he's gone through a divorce and is a single father. It's a great job for that. I will say that, because you are flexible in your schedule but you are also gone. For a good part of the weekends and for 6 months, 5 months, whatever it might be. And I was in a position to where I didn't necessarily need the job, but it was, I was going to need to do something. And for him, that's a decision that he has to ask himself, with where he is in life. How much time does he not want to miss out on? And that's what we talked about. But if he does it, and I assume he will, I think he'll be fantastic.
I think he'll be fantastic too, and I think he'll be fantastic for the reason why I think you're good. And this brings it back to what I said at the top. What I appreciate about you is you don't have any issues calling out a ref or a player if they screw up. Now, I'm not saying I need analysts to rip the guys, go over the top, be disrespectful. But I cited this on the podcast last week when I was talking to Brian Curtis about it. In the Giants-Seahawks game, it's a little thing, but there was a play where Geno Smith dropped back to pass. Kenneth Walker was supposed to block. He didn't do anything on the play. You did the replay, and you said, well, they have Kenneth Walker there to protect, but he does absolutely nothing. Every other analyst would be like, well, he was trying to do this, or like maybe he did, like they sugarcoat it and try. You just come out, he did nothing. It's not disrespectful. It's just straight calling what you see. I don't understand. And I think Tom will be able to do that. That's why I think he'll be good. And that's why I think you're good. Why do you think so many analysts have so much trouble just calling out a player if they do something or didn't do their job or did something wrong on the field?
Yeah, I don't know. I will say for me, that the last thing I would want to be known as is someone who calls out coaches or calls out players. I mean, because I don't think that's who I am. But if a guy does something wrong or makes a mistake or then I just say it as I see it, and my personality in general is pretty direct. I don't typically use a lot of words to get my point across. But I have great respect for the coaches and the players that do it. And where I get frustrated and maybe get more upset is when I see a lack of effort. That's what really incenses me. Tom, I think Tom and I are a lot alike, to be quite honest with you, that, he runs pretty hot as a competitor. We've seen that side of him. And he definitely has opinions on how he feels the game should be played. And as a quarterback, he didn't have much patience for it. And it's the reason why he was able to have the career that he had. And so, yeah, I think he'll be – there's part of it is finding his voice and just, who he's working with and how he's able to, say what he wants to say. I think every guy comes into the booth, whether you're a coach or former player, that feels like, hey, I'm going to educate the world on football. And then you realize you have no time to do that. So you got to pick your moments, and now the game's played faster than it ever has been before, so you have less time. But yeah, I think he's going to give an honest, unvarnished opinion, and I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I like the fact too that you will criticize the officials when they need to be. Like the end of that Chiefs Vikings game. Like I like Tony Romo.
You from now on.
You can, but like the end of the Chiefs Vikings game, like I like Tony Romo, but like. They pick up a flag on a pass interference that was a pass interference. Then the guy takes his helmet off. Whoever's in that booth has to be calling that out. I mean, that was horrible at the end of that game. But I'm not going to put you on the spot and make you comment on that.
Well, I think you have. I'm not. I don't know. I didn't see that with Tony. I just think that. I think the fan. I don't do the game to placate the fan.
Right.
But I do think there are certain things that are in the job description of being an analyst. And I think you got to have an opinion and you've got to say what you think or, give your thoughts. I don't think you can just simply let things go and not weigh in on them.
And I think Troy knows that I'm not scared to have an opinion too. And right. he's not going to be on his own. And I can't speak to anybody else. I would be probably the worst person to speak on anybody else's dynamic in the booth because I think you have to be there, see it, feel it to know what it is. But I think if Troy goes in on something, more than likely, I'm going to agree with it. If I don't, I think he knows that I'll say I don't, and we can get into it that way. If we agree on something and John Perry now or in years past Mike Pereira didn't agree with it, I like those debates too, because I think somebody's opinion is going to be served, everybody's will be that's watching, because it's either was that a good call or not.
Right.
And I remember our former boss not liking the way that I would bring Mike Pereira in, and I just trying to get it because there's a limited amount of time. I would say, Mike, do you like that call? I mean, that's pretty much why you're there. Is that did they do that right, or is that are we not seeing this right? And the answer is yes or no. I mean, do you like that call? You used to be their boss. Was that a good call? I mean, I don't know how much any other way to do it any quicker.
You hear the words "you like that" and not think of Kirk Cousins. I mean, is that even possible?
No.
It is not. It is not. You've piqued my interest, though. What did they not like about the way you brought in Pereira?
I don't know. I guess because it's making him take a stand on a call that's made by an official that's employed by the NFL. And now he's got to say that was a good call, that was a bad call, that was the NFL will like that, the NFL won't like that. I don't know. I have no idea.
You like that.
You like that.
I'm trying to be respectful and not give my opinion of what I think of the rules analyst. Well, let me ask you, when you go to John Parry, is that all you going to him, or is that a producer in your ear telling you when to go to him?
That's pretty much us. I mean, I can see him. He's, for some reason he's switched. Have you noticed that, Troy, that he's now to our left? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, there is. And I've been meaning to get that changed back, but
typically he's down past Troy, so I can see him. It makes way more sense for him to be to Troy's right, because I'm on the left, Troy to my right. He should be beyond him so I can see him like I have something to say about this. Now he's behind me.
Right.
And so sometimes I forget he's there. And our producers, Steve Ackles will say, hey, John can weigh in this. I'm like, oh, yeah, shit. He's right there. Go ahead, John. What do you see? Was that a good call?
The answer is usually no, and they say yes, but we don't have to get into that.
Okay.
All right. Couple of football questions. I want to ask Troy as the former player. The tush push. There's people want it like banned. I'm curious what you think as a former player. I don't know how you ban a specific play. I mean, I guess you put rules in about where the players have to be lined up, but just want to get your take on that as one of the all-time great quarterbacks.
Well, I'm not crazy about the play,
because why?
I don't know. It just seems
cheap
a little bit. I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know. It just seems like a mass of people and just, whatever. It's just not something that I'm that fond of. And but to say now, should it be banned? I hate to say that, just because the fact that the Eagles are the only team that's really got it dialed in. Everyone else tries it, and it's just, it's like jet motion. The Rams started doing it, and then everybody started doing it, but the Rams were still the only ones having any success with it. It's like people do it, but they don't even really know what they're doing or why they're doing it. So I don't like the way it looks, but I was surprised, quite honestly. I really thought that the league would get rid of it after this past year. And my guess is just because some guys have gotten hurt when the Giants tried it, and now there's more discussion about it. My guess is that this might be the last year we see it.
I think it was the Giants. They were just a complete embarrassment because nobody pushed Daniel Jones. Why do you think
nobody pushed, and they lost two offensive linemen in the process?
Right. So. But why do you think other teams can't pull it off, and why are the Eagles the only team that can do it? Well,
because the Eagles quarterback can squat 600 pounds. Troy,
Good
would
answer.
you have enjoyed doing that? Being shoved from behind as you plow ahead into massive people? It sounds awful.
I went 7 years without running a quarterback sneak. And then Barry Switzer came in and couldn't understand when we got stopped against the Eagles in 1995 on the road at the Vet. We went for it twice on 4th and 1. There was a penalty, and Madden about jumped out of the booth. He was so.
Oh, I remember that. That's on YouTube. I watched that recently. It is on YouTube. Yeah.
We didn't even have quarterback sneak in the game in the playbook, and Barry Switzer was just flabbergasted that such a play didn't exist, especially as a former Wishbone head coach. And the next week, the quarterback sneak was in the game plan, and it was run. I'm not sure if I picked it up or not, but yeah, Patrick Mahomes got hurt on a quarterback sneak. I'm not saying they're not outlawing quarterback sneaks. I don't want anybody to misrepresent what I'm saying.
Right.
I think the Chiefs have outlawed them.
Yeah, they probably have. I don't know that they've run it since, but they got the reason it works is the Eagles got arguably the best offensive line in football, and like Joe said, they got a quarterback that squats 600 pounds, and I don't know anyone else that can do that.
Yeah. Can you remember off the top of your head? You might not be able to. What's the most rushing yards you had in a game?
Probably would have been my rookie year. I think I had 200 or 300 yards rushing my rookie year. I'd have to look it up, but I was, I could run. I went to Oklahoma as a wishbone quarterback,
Right.
and so I could run. I timed 4.6 in college, and then and what happens, Jimmy, for young quarterbacks, you run because you don't know what you're looking at. Young quarterbacks run more than veteran quarterbacks, first and foremost, because they don't know what they're seeing and they're confused and they get pressure and they just tuck it and run. And as quarterbacks get more and more acclimated to the pocket and learn coverages and the offense in the NFL, they start throwing from the pocket more. We saw that even with a guy like Steve Young. So it's just a natural progression. And then as you get older, then your legs start to go out on you and you better be able to throw from the pocket or you're going to have a really short career.
It's funny because I think I heard Aaron Rodgers yesterday on McAfee say that he's told Josh Allen to try to, slide, take a knee, not run as much because.
Well, I think the head coach there in Buffalo, McDermott, has told him long before Aaron Rodgers. But nice of Aaron to weigh in on that as well.
The other thing I wanted to ask, and you can both weigh in on this, but I'm just a fan, so I don't know anything. But I would think if you win 6 Super Bowls, you're sort of good for life. But now everyone's saying Belichick has to be fired, might be fired. Patriots fans want him fired. Who knows what Bob Kraft's going to do? Go ahead, Troy. He's waving to your son back there. Tell him hi. I'd love to hear what
Uncle Troy says hi, Blakey. He's got pink eye.
If something,
great.
Look, if Bill Belichick were to lose his job in New England,
right?
It not that anyone needs to be reminded. It just is a reminder. It's tough business. No.
Seriously. I mean, I get that he's 71. I don't think, you hear people say the game has passed them by. I don't think that's the case, but I do think maybe it's tough to coach at that age these days because the players are so young. I don't know, but
I don't think that's it at all. I really don't. I think he's very much in tune with his players. I just think they've not drafted well,
right?
And they don't have a quarterback.
They have no talent anywhere. They have no receivers, no running backs. I mean, it's not just it all goes on the quarterback, but where's their playmaker?
Well, that's it. And I say they don't have a quarterback. I mean, I like Mac. I know he's struggled. I guess a better way of saying it is when you have one of the best that's in the game and the best that's ever played the game, and you look at the teams that have had success that are having, they've got quarterbacks that are playing at an unbelievably high level. I mean, that's how you win big. And Tom made up for a lot of mistakes. I mean, he really did. He made up for a lot of mistakes in the draft room. He made up for a lot of inefficiencies in their team. I've always believed, Jimmy, that any weakness in a team ultimately gets exposed through the quarterback position. Because if you don't have a defense, you're playing from behind. You're constantly having to throw. If you don't have an offensive line, then it's all, and it all shows up at quarterback. And the fans always then point to the quarterback, say, "Oh, well, he's the problem." Well, Tom, he didn't let those things show up at the quarterback position. He made up for them. They didn't have an offensive line. He'd throw the ball away, would not take a sack. Get me into the fourth quarter, give me a chance to win the game, and I'll make enough plays to win the game. And that's what he did. I mean, there were teams that he was a part of that won Super Bowls at the end of his time in New England. You put pretty much any other quarterback on the field with those teams, they wouldn't have won Super Bowls.
Right.
I mean, I believe that. Yeah. So, now you've got Mac, who I thought had a really good rookie year, did a lot of good things. Last year, I don't know how you can judge a quarterback based on last year. What he went through, I can't even imagine.
With the two offensive coordinators?
A special teams coach and a former defensive coordinator. I love those guys, and I love Matt Patricia, but I've never known a defensive coordinator in all my years that I would have said, hey, I think this guy can make a great offensive coordinator. And Bill Belichick knows more football than I'll ever dream of, and he knows that. But for whatever reason, he overestimated what they would be able to do. So to try to then evaluate Mac Jones on that, I think is totally unfair. Yeah. And now you go into this year, who knows how much confidence he lost last year. Now there's even more pressure on him. He's had things go against him. And, I'm not sure they're great around him on that side of the ball this year. So anyway, long way of saying that's how you lose games.
Yeah. You think Bill would get hired right away if the Patriots moved on?
100%.
Yeah. Joe, I'm curious. You guys, I understand.
He may go to the Fox pregame.
Is that true?
No.
Oh, I almost bought that. That was good. I was like Belichick on TV, but I could see him wanting to analyze things. So that's why I bought it for a
actually think
second.
Bill's got a lot to. I mean, that's another conversation in a different podcast some other day. But I think somebody like Bill, Troy and I have been in a million meetings with Bill. He's happy to talk about anything you want to talk. You want to talk about baseball and the history of the DH,
right?
You want to talk about why Clemente was a great outfielder. He'll talk about that for an hour. It's just when you start talking to him about his team, he clamps up. So, I mean, who knows what he's willing to say and not willing to say. I was kidding about that, but everything Troy said, that's it. But Bill is the guy who made those decisions. Bill is the guy who's done the drafting. Bill is the guy who put Patricia in that spot. Bill is a guy, so you can't separate those things,
right?
And Brady's not there, so he's responsible for that too, as much as the winning.
Right. This is a stupid question, but I'll throw it out there. Just who knows? I'm sure you don't have any say in ESPN flexing out a game, but can you make your opinion known? Like, can you say, "Hey, in 3 weeks we have, Bears Vikings. Are we going to get rid of this game?" Or do you don't say a word about that? Joe.
Me? No, I believe me. I think the network is well ahead of where Troy and I would be. And I think that those years of doing Thursday night football, I'm pretty much fine with calling any game and any matchup. I mean, we'll make it good. We did that Seattle Giants game. I could make the case that was one of our more fun games that we've done in a long time. It wasn't fun for Daniel Jones. It wasn't fun for Giants fans, but if a game gets out of hand or gets a little wonky, then you can have fun within that game. So I don't get into all that stuff, but I think the network is hopeful that if the game is a D-, is a D, forget F, that they'll be able to go to a B. I don't think we're going to go from a D to an A, but I think a more competitive game is why it's there. If we're not going to do it, if we're not ever going to get out of a game that's not that compelling, I think Monday night has got to get back to, and we're so close to it already, but it's such appointment TV. I think Sunday night drafts off a day of football. It leads into a nice matchup, a great matchup at times. And it's easy to just leave the TV on and, okay, the late Fox game is over. The late CBS game's over. Let's go to the NBC pregame and let it roll into. But now Monday night, and you've been watching college football all day Saturday, NFL all day Sunday night, you need in my opinion, with all the options that are out there, you need a really compelling matchup to draw people back to their television. So I think everybody gets that and realizes that. And I think that's why we have to have a competitive standings altering game by the time you get to week 12, which is when our flex abilities start.
Forget week 12. I mean, you might need it soon. I think those are the rules. I thought yours starts week, or maybe that's Sunday night, week 6.
Yeah, week 12.
Okay, week 12. All right, because as a nerd who follows this stuff way too much, I think you're going to see more flexing for Thursday, Sunday, and Monday than any year before, because they loaded up so many teams in prime time who are not good. The Broncos, the Giants, the Patriots, the Bears, the Raiders, like they're loaded. So you have Dolphins, Jets, week 12.
We'll see how legitimate our chances of flexing are. I think we've got a guy on our crew.
Week 12, you have Bears Vikings. That game will probably have to get flexed. I think as we look at it now, and who knows what happens between now and then, whenever that decision I think is 10 or 12 days out when that has to be made. Who knows if something changes, and maybe it will. But
I think of all the games we have on the back end of our schedule, that's the only one that as we sit here now goes, that likely will get flexed.
Right.
But who knows?
Right. All right, Troy, I'm going to make a statement, and you tell me why I'm wrong. Barring injury, the season's over and the Niners are winning the Super Bowl.
Oh, I love the 49ers. Joe knows that. I love everything about what they do on both sides of the ball, the way that they play. I love Kyle. John Lynch is, they've done an amazing job building that team. But you still have to go play. And so, I mean, it's all cliche. If they can stay healthy, they would definitely be my pick. I just think I don't want to say better coached than anyone else. I think they're as well coached as any team in football. I think they've got who I regard as the best head coach in football right now. If I had my pick as a GM, he would be my first pick. Kyle would be. I don't even know who my second choice would be. And they play a style that you just don't see. So it would take. I mean, they can afford some injuries because they're so good at so many positions. But I think it would have been interesting last year if Brock Purdy had stayed healthy.
Yeah,
that might have looked like in the championship game. I really do. I think it would have been a heck of a game. But
I thought at the time when
you can go out there in any given day, as you know, and just be off and lose to a team that's not as good. We see that each and every week.
It just seems like they've got the mojo this year. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, I think, quite honestly, Jimmy, I think that this is a team that has done it for several years. I mean, they've been really good, but if they don't win a championship, and I would now make the argument you almost have to win two before you get regarded as a team. I don't want to say dynasty, but as a team that historically is remembered. And so that's what eludes this group. And we called their Super Bowl when they played Kansas City. It looked like they were going to win the game, and then Patrick does what he does late in the game, but that they've got to win their first. But I think you might make the argument they have to win two in order for this group, which I think is historically good. But you got to win a Super Bowl.
I just have one more. It just came to me when you said that. I had Julian Edelman on the podcast recently, and he said to me, the Chiefs are not a dynasty. They've only won two. You got to win three to be a dynasty. What's your take on that as someone who has won several?
Well, I've won three, so I'll take that.
Right.
Okay. I'm all for that.
But do you agree the Chiefs are not a dynasty yet?
Oh, I think they are. I mean, I do. I think they're going to be the team that they're definitely going to be remembered already for what they've done. Yeah, I don't know what dynasty necessarily means, but well,
you were part of one.
Tom Brady says you got to win 6. So
really?
I'd say 7, but that was he only had one with Tampa. Only.
Yeah. All right, I got to end it with this. Troy, when are you going on Chris Mad Dog Russo's show?
I'm going on. I think next week.
Joe, do you know this backstory?
No, I was going to say, why is that a thing? What does that mean?
So I'll tell you why. I had Russo on this podcast, and you know how he is. So towards the end of the podcast, he started interviewing me basically on my own podcast, asking me which broadcasters I've had on and not had on. And I said, I've had, every NFL guy on. I said, the one guy I can't get is Charles Barkley. That, like, out of the huge broadcasters and analysts and sports, the one guy I can't get is Barkley.
I don't know Charles Barkley has ever said no. This is
he's been on. So I'll tell you. So, and he says to me, the one guy he can't get is Troy Aikman. He says he's never had Troy on. He can't get Troy on.
Yeah, and he said he gets me at the Super Bowl, which I've been on a couple times. He's never asked me. I mean, he's never. I couldn't believe that when he said that because, I'm not a big podcast guy, as Joe knows, but I was listening to you and I reached out to him and said, hey, I heard you on with Traina.
Yeah. So
anytime you want me, I said, you got to ask.
So 2 days later, I get a text from Russo, and the entire text is just a screen grab of Troy's text to Russo saying, I heard you on with Traina. I'll come on anytime. And Russo is acting, no offense, Troy, he's acting like he won the lottery. Like on his show, he's like, I'm going to have Troy Aikman, thanks to Trainer. He went on, he goes, thanks to the power of Trainer, he puts an ER on my name. He's like, I've got Troy Aikman coming on. So first of all, I was thrilled because I didn't know Troy actually listens. So I know we established that you don't earlier. So Troy does.
Yeah, no, I don't. And
Russo, like once a week on his show, talks about how Troy's going to come on. And he's over the moon about this.
I'm blown away on many different levels, because the fact that Troy reached out and was proactive about this to go on with Chris Mad Dog Russo, who I love, absolutely love. That's good. That makes me happy, and I'm glad that you're a matchmaker. You're like Aaron Andrews and Carissa Thompson.
That's
with
right.
Kelsey
Yes.
and Taylor Swift.
You're a facilitator.
Right.
And
there you go.
Joe is absolutely right. I don't know that I've ever done that before, and it really is for the same reason.
Dog was despondent. He's like, I can't get Troy. I want Troy.
Yeah, which it blew me away.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, he had never even asked me to do it. You know, I mean, but he acts like he had, so I'm not going to question that. He must have, but I don't know who he was asking. I mean, PR at Fox or PR at ESPN never once has come to me and said, "Hey, would you do Mad Dog?" But I reached out to him because I do like him. I like him a lot.
He was over the moon.
Yeah,
over
good.
the moon.
Hope I don't disappoint him when I go on.
And then he got me Barkley. So yeah, it worked out. Yeah, so that's what he's like. We got Traina Barkley. Traina got me Aikman, and
So. I think you win, Trainer.
It was a great podcast with Charles. I appreciate you guys coming on, and 22 years together. Enjoy this season, and passing John and Pat, and enjoy the rest of the way. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, joining me now, as he does every week, for our Traina Thoughts segment from WFAN Radio in New York, SNY TV in New York, my buddy Sal Licata. Sal, how's it going?
Hi, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm good. Hanging in there. We got to start with what's by far and away the biggest topic in the world of myself right now. Has nothing to do with sports, but it needs to be discussed. Did you see the comments from Jerry Seinfeld?
No. What happened?
So Jerry was doing, I guess, a stand-up show over the weekend, I believe, in Boston.
Okay.
He must have been taking questions from the audience, which I don't know why he would do that, but although I'm going to be answering listener questions later, so that was...
Yeah, you just told me, like, hey, we're going to be doing questions. We're going to be taking questions. I think it could be good.
I'm Jimmy Traina. He's Jerry Seinfeld. He doesn't need to be dealing with people.
Right.
And I guess I'm going to ask them about the Seinfeld finale, which I think I'm the only person who liked. I actually liked it. I like seeing all the old characters come back.
Agreed. I thought they buttoned it up as well as you could.
And he said to the audience, I can't say anything. It's a secret. He goes, but, quote, something is going to happen that has to do with the ending, but it hasn't been done yet. I don't know if that means an episode. I don't know if that means something on the upcoming season of Curb, because I think he had mentioned Larry David would be involved. Because Larry David came back to write the finale. So I don't know if he means a Super Bowl commercial. He didn't say, but he said something is going to happen.
Wow. You just made my day. I didn't know that was even, I missed that.
I wonder if it's going to be something on the upcoming season of Curb. But he said no, because he said it hasn't happened yet. Well, he could mean it hasn't aired. It's not airing, but they filmed it. I'm not sure. I will just say this. Whatever they do, I want all four of them to be involved. All four have to be involved.
Right, but I don't think they would if I don't think they would do it if they weren't, right? Like when they appeared on Curb, weren't all four there?
Yes. And the reunion on Curb, to me, was one of the greatest things in television. It was so good. It was so well done.
Right.
But they did a Super Bowl.
Feel if it's a Curb thing or if it's going to be like a digital Seinfeld thing, maybe they get out of jail, you know.
That would be
right?
good.
I mean,
that would be. They could start with that for sure. They can
I would
absolutely
assume that's where it's going to pick up. If they do, that's something that hasn't been done. So
that's a great call by you, that they get out of jail. Wow. Yeah. Maybe that's,
how
let's
the
see.
world changed from where they went.
I'm going to do something that's bad for podcasts. I'm going to Google, when was the Seinfeld finale? What year was it? Let's see.
98. May of 98.
Right. So 98. So that's 25 years later. A 25
right,
year.
But they
25-year jail sentence.
They could play it up like that, but they did say 1 year, right? They were only supposed to be in jail for
1 year. Is that
year.
what it was? Okay.
I think so, yeah. Like 1 year, that's not that long.
Yeah. The full quote is, something is going to happen that has to do with the ending. It hasn't happened yet. Just what you were thinking about. Larry and I have also been thinking about, so you'll see.
Okay. Love it. Well, anything that they do is going to be monstrous. So I'm in for it. And I'll like it, whatever it is.
See, this is the thing, though. With my personality, I hate the tease. Like, I hate the fact that it says that hasn't even happened yet. So, like, maybe we're not going to get something for a year. I hate that. I don't like, you should have told me right before it's going to happen. Because now I'm going to
well, just forget about it and move on. And then when it happens, you'll be surprised.
Easier said than done. Because I want to know.
I'm excited about it, but I'm not going to dwell on it.
Oh, I will dwell. I'm excited and I will dwell. I will do both. The only thing I wanted to ask you from the sports world, have you, I know you're a Met fan, so I would imagine it might be a little tough to get into the MLB playoffs, but have you been watching? Do you care?
No, I saw the play last night live because I was rooting for the Phillies.
The double play?
So I saw the ending, but I have not. I will, and I guess as we go on further here, I'll try to maybe pay more attention to it, but I don't think it's been very good. The fact that the Orioles have gotten behind 0-2, I think, hurts. The Dodgers have been awful. The first round series were dreadful. Really, the Phillies-Braves matchup is the only one that I think is good. I don't care about the Twins, Astros, myself, maybe, but no, I'm not into it, to answer your question.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Are you into it or no?
Yeah, I'm into it. I love seeing the Diamondbacks get 2 games in LA. I love seeing the Twins. They won a game in Houston. The scenes in Philly are the best. The Braves Phillies haven't played that yet. The Phillies played that. I mean, there's to watch that on TV. The scenes in Philadelphia are tremendous. But that game last night with on Monday night, we're taping this on Tuesday, with the Austin Riley homer and then the double play. I do think I'd like these series to be 7 games. The problem with baseball is the regular season is just too long. And they got to cut 2 weeks off the regular season and have this start sooner and then make this round 7 games, because they have the World Series going until November. They've got it. I don't know. It took them forever to do the pitch clock, which everyone knew had to happen. Right. And it's taking them forever to fix the scheduling, but it's something that needs to be fixed. I don't see how they don't see that. Yeah,
I don't mind the extra team, but I'm okay with it if they make the ultimate games. I want the elimination wildcard game. The best of 3 it does nothing for me. And these series for 2 years now have been so bad. Then you have the layoff with teams who have a bye, and they haven't been very good. So I don't know.
I have no sympathy for a team that is struggling after a layoff. If you can't get ready, that's on you. But that's just how I feel.
But it's a part of it. It's not that they can't get ready. You just add a rhythm. Anyway, I don't even necessarily care about that. The best of 3 takes away from. Think about it. You could have every series guaranteed elimination game. People watch elimination games. So the game 1 of a wild card series, whatever. Game 2, it's okay, well, this team, if they win today, it's over. And that's exactly what happened. Did it happen in all the series? All 2 games?
All the series are 2 games, yeah.
Yeah, so but imagine if those 4 were ultimate games, win or go home. You're watching every one of those 4.
The problem is, if you're going to have all these teams make the playoffs, there's just no perfect, there's just way too many teams that make the playoffs. But I get why they do that, because they want to have all this extra inventory during the postseason. Right. Just makes the regular season so meaningless. These teams, but all right, like I said, I'm going to start answering questions on the pod every week. People always send me good questions, and I think it's good fodder for the podcast more than just throwing out an answer on Twitter. And then we can discuss and get into something. So I threw it out there. This not a long time ago, so we don't have a ton, but we'll get it going this week. It's also funny to see when someone asks a question when you can tell they're not really a regular reader or listener. For instance, we have a question here from Matt Ramus. For years, I only knew the DirecTV version of Red Zone. This year is my first look at the Scott Hansen version. What an improvement. What are your thoughts? I don't watch the Red Zone. Have not watched 1 second of the Red Zone this year. I have YouTube Sunday Ticket. I had Scott Hansen on the podcast before the season started. He was great. I enjoyed talking to him. Seems like a great dude. I can't offer you an opinion on the Red Zone because I have not watched 1 second of it this season.
Don't watch it. Never have. Likely never will.
Hansen was great, though.
I loved it. Yeah, I'm sure he was. I mean, who was the other guy? Siciliano was the guy?
Andrew Siciliano. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not knocking them. I'm not knocking the channel. It's never been for me. I am the Red Zone in my house. Right. I don't need the Red Zone. I have all the games up. I'll go which ones I want. That's just the way that I like to watch it. So
I feel bad for Siciliano. I thought he got a raw deal because they got rid of the DirecTV and they went to YouTube, and then his version was out. So that's a bummer for him.
What is he? But he's still with NFL Network, right?
Yeah, he does a lot of work for the NFL Network and NFL Plus.
But he lost that particular job. Yeah,
they got rid of the whole thing. They just had the Scott Hansen one. So
right.
Moose Block asked, "What guests do you have for some of the upcoming podcasts?" So I really don't book it in advance. I really just book it week to week. This is a case where the last couple were booked weeks in advance. So I have someone next week. I can't say who it is yet, but you will enjoy it. It's someone who has never, ever been on the podcast before. And the day before, I guess, maybe I'll tweet out that he's coming on. But you're going to want to listen next week, I guarantee you.
So do I even know about this or no?
I don't know if I told you. I'll text you after.
You told me this week. Yeah, I need to know
this week.
Now you got me.
Yeah.
You do what
maybe
Jerry
I won't
did.
tell you.
The payoff here.
Yeah. Michael Silvers, to your knowledge, has Tom Brady done any practice games yet? I mean, I don't know, but there's no way he's done practice games. He probably won't do games until next preseason. So I think Tom is just enjoying it. It's funny. Everyone thought he wasn't going to become a broadcaster. Now everyone, I think, realizes he is going to become a broadcaster. But
and Fox is still going ahead with that plan to move Olsen?
Well, listen, on October 10th, 2023, yes. What's going to happen in September of 2024? Who the hell knows? But
they should not, just my opinion on it, don't mess with Burkhardt, Olsen. Bring Brady in on the number 2 team and let him do his thing with somebody else.
I would guarantee you, I'd be willing to bet big money Tom has it in his contract that he has to be on the number 1 team. Tom Brady's not going to Fox to be on the number 2 team with Joe Davis. It's not happening.
It's just a mistake. I mean, you're going to have a guy now who hasn't done it before replace a successful team when they need depth as it is on their broadcasts.
I think my prediction for what's going to happen is I think they're going to make it a 3-man booth with Olsen and Brady. That's what I think.
I don't know if I like that either. 3-man booth?
That's what I think. Tom's never done it. He's got to get his feet wet.
One that I like now, I like the Catalan, Matt Ryan, and Tiki Barber one.
Big shocker, you like Matt Ryan.
Well, and Tiki. I mean, I work with Tiki, and he's the nicest guy ever. And I love Matt Ryan because he was a great player for the Falcons. But I think 3 could be a crowd.
Yes, I agree. But I think that's what I think they're going to do, because I've written this before. If they blow out Olsen, move him to number 2, put in Brady, they're going to make people hate Brady before he even calls a game.
Right.
That's my theory.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You got something that's working, don't mess with it.
Yeah. Got a question here. Dr. Nacho MD. I was listening to a podcast hosted by one or two of your frequent guests, and their guest would not stop rambling. So exasperating, I had to turn it off. Have you encountered that? How do you manage it? So we can both, you do interviews as well. I get, the number one criticism I get for this podcast is that I cut off my guests. The way I handle it is I just cut someone off. I mean, you've got to move the conversation. You can't. It depends what they're rambling about too. I mean, sometimes they're rambling and they're giving you a good answer, but if you want to move the conversation, if you're thinking, is the listener still here? Is this making the listener want to shut this off? You got to just cut off the guest. I know it's rude, but that's what I do. What do you do?
It's different with radio. We're taught, especially now. First of all, it's minimal with guests. If you like it, especially for a day part and a show with a partner. If I'm on the overnight by myself, a little bit of a different story. You get 5 hours to fill. You need to figure out a way to make the show good. Changing it up with a guest for 15 minutes, not the end of the world. During the day, if we do have a guest on, it's just got to keep it moving. I'll have a feel for when, if I feel like it's dragging, I just jump in and cut them off and keep it moving on to something else.
Those questions came from Twitter. Got a few on Instagram where everyone is nice. So these are all like nice questions. Tony Boz, what guest has been your biggest challenge when interviewing? I love your show. It's a good question. I'll say it this way. Anyone who comes on for the first time is a challenge because you don't have any rapport. They don't know my sense of humor. They don't know the vibe, what I'm going for. So whenever someone comes on for the first time, that's why the Barkley thing was shocking to me. I had never spoken to Barkley. He came on and there was no like feeling out period. He was great from the get-go. A lot of times if someone hasn't been on, it's hard to get something going. And then if there's a time limit, that's a problem because it takes, I would say, it takes at least 15 minutes to get comfortable. And then you can have a conversation for the people who've never been on before. So the first timers are always the biggest challenge for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's totally different what we do because you're guest centric on your podcast. Every week you have a guest. I never really thought.
But you have to have challenges doing any interview you have on players after they lose a game. Is that a challenge?
All right, so here's maybe a specific challenge that, like, we had Adoree Jackson on today. He's a weekly spot. The Giants get their teeth kicked in every week. Like, I even said to him today, flat out, I'm tired of asking you the same questions and hearing the same answers, and nothing's changing. Right. So, like, yeah, that's the challenge when you know what the players are going to give you or not going to give you, and you got to ask the question anyway. You know you're not going to get much from it. I guess that's probably the toughest challenge, or making something out of nothing, trying to make a way to make it entertaining, which I don't even know if we did. But
yeah, if I had to interview a player whose team is, what are they, 1-4 every week, that would be a challenge. That would be fun.
When they literally do like they don't even compete in the game. So it's and we're saying the same thing. Hey, you guys didn't tackle. What do you got to do next week? Well, we got to tackle better. Yeah, but you didn't do it last week, so why would I think you could do it this week? So it is challenging, I guess. Yeah.
Chris Goley in 65 asks, best practices for starting a football or sports podcast. I wish I could answer this and offer you some advice. I mean, I don't even know how to make this podcast grow. So I'm being serious. Like, it's just so, we talked about this last week with Brian Curtis. There's just so many podcasts out there. It's just impossible to try to convince people to listen to yours. There's just so many. What I would say to Chris is do it the way you want to do it. Don't worry about who's listening and just, try to spread the word. There's really no magical formula. It really isn't.
Yeah. Just do whatever you do. Make sure you love doing it and do it passionately, and then you hope it takes off. But don't try to do something that you think people are going to catch on to. That's never going to work.
All right, so those are the questions that came in. Like I said, I didn't put the call out too long ago, but those are good questions. We'll do that on a weekly basis here and get you guys more involved. Appreciate you guys listening and sending questions. Keep sending them in. And that's it. Sal, we'll see you next week. Try to get into the baseball playoffs.
All right. Feel better there. I get to tell you're dealing with a little bit of a cold and whatever issues you got going on.
Yeah. I hope it's not the big
feel bad. I know you don't handle these things well. Most Italian men don't. I know. My mother always used to tell me.
No, that's not true. I'd rather not go through, I guess I'm going to go get a COVID test because I have a sore throat and I'm coughing. I have no problem with that. my thing is, I want to know what's wrong right away. Like, if I have COVID, tell me I have COVID. If I don't, tell me right away so I know what I'm in for. What I have going on isn't really that. Like, I feel fine, except I woke up with a sore throat.
Right.
But,
yeah.
I don't want to deal with, like, if there's like 80 people in urgent care. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Just tell me what I have wrong. Let me deal with it, and then I'll be fine. I would have liked to have gotten sick later in the week. So then I'm just, watching football all weekend, and, you don't feel bad about doing that.
All right.
You don't want to be sick middle of the week. See, if this was back in the days when we worked in the office, then I would like to get sick during the week, because then you call out.
Calling sick.
When you work from home, there's no calling out. We're screwed. You got to work.
Right. So. There's no advantage to being sick when you're sick working from home.
Exactly. No advantage.
Yeah. Don't forget to text me the guest, because I want to know now.
Yeah.
All right.
I miss the days when you would call up like 5 a.m, leave like, yeah, I'm not feeling well. I can't come in today. Then you're at the beach. Then you're at the beach.
The stress of having to make that call was almost never worth it. But then once you got that call in, it was like, yes, I'm free. I did it.
You had to worry about your acting performance.
And what I will say, Jimmy, real quick, for those of you who are like young and have whatever jobs that you're doing, at a high school or trying to make some money while you're going to college, just call in sick when you need to. Like, because I used to sweat calling in sick to Home Depot or King Cullen. It doesn't mean shit. They'll survive.
Right.
Call in sick. You're not going to get in trouble. Live your fucking life. I mean,
don't go over your sick days. You don't want to do that.
Right. But don't be afraid to use them.
I've known a couple of people over the years, 2 people over the years, who had too many sick days and got in trouble for it. So
really,
don't go crazy, but use them when you
now.
Yeah,
different story. But like back then, I was so afraid to call in sick to Home Depot. And looking back, I'm like, come on, bro, you should have used those days that you had.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about if you have like your job now, like
no, I'm not talking about a real job.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like when before you get that real job.
Right. Yeah, I agree. You don't even have to show up to that other job half the time. All right, Sal. We'll see you next week.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy. All right, my thanks to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, and of course to Sal Licata as always. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did and you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button and subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. Leave a review on Apple. And it helps tremendously if you can rate and review. If you missed any recent episodes, go into the archives and check them out. Brian Curtis of The Ringer was on the podcast last week. Andrew Marchand of the New York Post 2 weeks ago. Kevin Clark from ESPN 3 weeks ago. So check those out. And again, subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week. We have a good one next week. I promise you. Someone who's never been on the pod before. So you'll want to check it out. So till next week, stay safe and take care.